Kyle Kearns and Patrick Delaney. And with that, we'll get to item number 2, and that's our 2022 Mcmillan Memorial Library Budget Review. Andy, would you like to give us a little, I guess, review or overview, whatever, on it?
Well, the main review is we're, as usual, asking for a 0 increase in our budget. The city part of the city appropriation that's part of our budget. We've basically done that for 20 years. The city then, our employees are city employees, and if there's a salary increase decided on later, that washes through to us. Any changes to the benefits that the city does also washes through to us. So this is a 0 increase budget for us, like I say, as we've done for many years. This year, we've had a doubly weird year this year. COVID, of course, makes everything weird, but we've been under construction since May, and that's changed how things operate too. The good thing is we fundraised $2 million, just under $2 million for redesigning a city facility, one of the main city facilities. 109,000 of that was city funding. The rest of the $2 million is going to be private funding. Seriously redesigning one of the major part of the library, the adult room, the theater, our main meeting room, adding spaces that we didn't have before. It's not just a renovation, it's a redesign for new and different uses, including a makerspace, including a recording studio, upgrading our theater so that it meets ADA standards. It was built in 1970, like a lot of the library, and it nowhere near met ADA standards, and it will meet ADA standards when we reopen. I can tell you a whole bunch more. I'm unsure how much more you want to hear.
Well, that's maybe more, but we'll see. Does anybody have questions to start with or anything that they'd like to ask to get going?
Just if you want to keep rolling with anything you have.
Well, among other things, we had 26,000 uses of our PCs in our building, and so that's a big part of the digital divide, where people who don't have PCs or who find that their phones are inadequate for doing Social Security or job applications come in and use our PCs. We had 165,000 uses of our Wi-Fi. Our Wi-Fi is real popular, and there are any number of people who come in and use it because, again, their phone is their main internet, and they don't want to use up their data, so they come in and use our data. The last year we had, in our last annual report, before COVID, we had 229,000 visitors at the library in a year, which is a really good number for a library our size. We have 47 computers in the building. We were doing, before COVID, 527 programs, not counting all the uses that our facility gets of our facility by people like United Way and other agencies who are coming in to use our meetings. One of the things we're doing during our redesign is adding another meeting room, another 600 square foot meeting room, just to meet that kind of demand. We're also adding in some small study rooms. We didn't design them for Zoom use, but they are perfect for Zoom use. We did kind of design them for online classes. We offer online classes, but this is a place for people who are taking online classes at various places to come in and use them. In some ways, we are a very average library. We are the 32nd biggest library in population in the state. We are the 32nd in circulation in the state. We are 34th in staff. We are in some ways a very typical library for a town our size. In other ways, we are a very unusual library because of our theater, because of the programs and services we can provide. We are going to be providing, especially after the redesign, a lot of services that you would only see in suburban Milwaukee, suburban Twin Cities, and we'll do this without asking for an increase in city funding or in staffing.
Thank you, Andy. Sherry?
Thank you, Andy. I just have a few questions. So, library is an awesome facility. It'll be even better once it gets there.
Yes.
Not trying to slam anything with the library. The only question I have is the wages. So if I'm reading the budget correctly, we have seven management positions or director positions to oversee 12 employees.
12 full-time equivalents, yes.
So 7.
But they're not, they're management level, but they're professionals in their, so it's kind of like having nurses and nurses' aides. Our what we call managers are someone with a library science degree and experience. So they have a master's degree in our subject. And they oversee major parts of the library. They do our children's services, they do our young adult services, they do our adult services. One of them then does mainly the oversight of the staff. They aren't there just to oversee the staff, they're there providing services. So the children's librarian does all kinds of programs and oversees all kinds of things. She doesn't spend a lot of time scheduling the people who check out books or assist. So they're managers in our budget lines, and we call them managers because we want them to be able to provide oversight when they are there alone. And all our managers do work time alone at night, on weekends. They're the only professional, the only manager in the building. But most of them spend their time doing direct service and planning programs and going out to the schools, going out to Boys and Girls Club, working with our community partners. So it's not like we have a whole bunch of people supervising a very small amount of people. Most of the supervision is concentrated in one professional position, and the assistant director do most of the direct oversight of them. And all of our management staff do programming. I mean, I do the movies, I do the concerts, I do other things. All of our professional staff are doing that. So it's more helpful to think of them as professional staff rather than overseers of the non-professional, paraprofessional staff.
Okay, thank you. I do see, I mean, I understand that. So the average wage between the seven managers is approximately $73,750. That's the average amount per manager or director. So like, okay, the customer service manager. So what does the customer service manager do differently than, I guess, the administrative services manager?
The customer services manager has a professional position in that they oversee their professional librarian. The administrative services manager is a different kind of professional position that oversees all the a lot of the operation side. So she's doing the budgets, she's working with Tim, she's working on all the various parts of the library that we have contracts for HVAC, and we have contracts for various things for the building. She oversees those. So she's not a professional librarian, but she's got an accounting degree and does that part of it.
Okay, still seems a little excessive to me.
I can assure you that these salaries line up real well with other libraries in the state. And one of the, I know that the personnel committee at the library is interested in doing a class and comp study to make sure that we are in alignment with other libraries in the state. And that's on their, they haven't assigned themselves that task, but it's one I've asked them to do in 2022. So that they are sure that these are in line with other libraries in the state. I know Our assistant director just moved to a library that is smaller than Mcmillan, and he's making more than I am. So, I mean, these seem like that, but librarians in some ways aren't tremendously well paid, but these are in line with other libraries in the state.
One other question. With the 2021 budget that was allotted this year for like the library budget in whole, someone had brought up one of the finance and budget meetings that I had watched, with the library being closed because of COVID, where staff, I mean, obviously they still had things to do, but
Yes.
on a lower key because, the library was closed. Were there any funds that are rolled over to this year that weren't utilized?
There are funds.
Because-
There are funds because, for instance, we didn't run our coffee house at all this year, and so we let a couple lower level positions go vacant. We were closed for part of the year, so we didn't have heat and lights. We paid our staff. They came in and worked. We switched to a RFID system, which we'd been planning to do for a long time. We did a lot of maintenance of the collection, which is an easy thing to get behind on. So there is money that carries over. It carries over, and then we find places to spend it. I mean, we're in a 50-year-old building, and unsurprisingly, as they did the renovation and the redesign, they found, oh, look, asbestos. That's not in the project. That came out of our operations budget. Oh, look, the water system that's part of our HVAC, that needs new chemicals and a complete flush and some other things. Well, that's where we're spending our carryover on catching up on things like that. And there's a finance committee and a buildings and grounds committee at the library whose job it is to make sure that those are worthy projects, that we're doing the right things, that the money is being spent. So this is not on me. There is a committee that's appointed mainly by you, partially by the county, who will make sure I'm doing things.
Another question. So the building and grounds portion of it, I think it's on page 59. Like for this year, 2021, it was budgeted for 130,000. For 2022 is 140,000, and then furnishing and fixtures of 78,000 for this year. So, and that was on top of the extra, I believe, the 109,000 that the city provided for the remodel. Are these funds also going towards the remodel?
They're going for, in some cases, they're going for adjacent things where they aren't part of our project. Our project budget is totally separate. That $2 million isn't reflected here at all. That's being run by the library endowment and the library board. So that $2 million is a completely separate thing being run by the library board and using funds from the library endowment. These are for things that in some cases popped up because we were renovating and we said, oh, we need to fix that too. Or we fixed this and, oh, look at what's next to it. We got to fix that. And there were a number of those things. And there were things we were trying to do in terms of improving airflow and improving energy efficiency, and we were doing some of those, especially the airflow things, in response to COVID, mainly with COVID. We have they don't make air handling systems like ours anymore. Those went out of style a long time ago, and so making changes to them is expensive.
And maybe this is a question for Tim on page 61. So the library revenue. So the coffee house revenue is budgeted for $25,000 for this year. And am I missing where the cost is to operate that? Am I missing that somewhere?
Usually that's an offset.
It's on page 58.
Oh, 58, right.
Under
Okay.
Yeah.
operating
Sorry.
supplies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then part of that is that when we do the carryover calculation, whatever they're short on revenues, that gets subtracted from their carryover. So like last year, with the COVID where they didn't have the coffee house expenses, they also didn't realize the revenue, so that was offset. So it's not like they get full value for the revenues that they budgeted in their carryover.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's an increase in our revenues, and the main increase in our revenues is we expect to have coffee house next year. And so that's an extra 25,000 of revenues. It's also an extra 25,000 of expense. We're not making money on our coffee house. It's a amenity for people who use the facility, and we're not trying to compete commercially with the coffee houses in town. Try to compete with Starbucks, you're going to lose, I guess.
I think that is all I have right now. Thank you very much.
And give us another couple of months, and I'll be happy to take all of you on a tour of the new redesigned space. We're looking to get a certificate of occupancy for most of it at the end of November. We have to move 30 tons of books back in there. We have a whole bunch of new furniture, and the theater got delayed for some reason, supply chain thing. So that won't be available till probably February, but come February or March, I'd love to have the city council stop over and take a tour of the new facility. We're going to be doing new services, new things, and it really is the biggest change in the library since 1970.
Tim?
I know we have a few new aldermen here, and they weren't on the council when the Viking electric project came on board. I was wondering if you just kind of give an overview of that project and kind of where that transitions over, and there were some fundraising things, and I think that would be beneficial to the new council members.
Certainly, it's always good to talk about that. In 2017, we entered into a public-private partnership with Viking Electric, who's not the Viking Electric in Wausau. It's Viking Electric, who's owned by Scott Prahl, who's a Lincoln High School graduate. And our arrangement is that he put a large number of solar panels on our roof, 470 of them, enough to generate about just under 200,000 kilowatt hours annually. And he owns them, and we are buying electricity from him. But at the end of the time, what's really happening is we're paying off his construction loan with the electricity we're buying, and he's using depreciation and tax credits to also pay off his construction loan. And at the end of when the loan is, the depreciation is expired, there's no more tax credits in 2023, we're going to pay off the rest of the loan, and the system will transfer to our ownership. And right now, it's generating, we're using about 300,000 kilowatt hours a year, so it would produce about 2/3 of the electricity we use. That is enough electricity for about 20 houses on an average basis. Libraries being big commercial buildings that have a lot of lights and are open a lot of hours. We use a lot of electricity, but this is a great way for us to get into solar power without owning the system, being able to utilize those tax credits, being able to utilize depreciation. And when we buy it out from him in 2023, we'll be saving between $25,000 and $30,000 in electric bills every month. Come and take a tour of that too, because it's huge. It's 13,000 square feet of silicon solar panels up on the roof.
I see that. So for the electric portion on page 59 for water and light is 27,000. I see that did decrease 3,000. The Viking Electric stayed the same. So are you saying that each year the water and light would decrease?
What's going to happen is the 28 from Viking Electric is going to go away entirely. in 2023. We won't be paying them anymore. We will own the system. And the way the water and light goes down is we redesign the building and put in more LEDs and better control systems. And that'll reduce our overall electric usage. And the water and light is, there are fixed charges on there for bringing power into a big building like ours. And those won't go away, but the amount of electricity we buy from them has already decreased significantly and shifted over to Viking Electric. At some point, then we buy the system from Viking Electric, and then we save that $28,000.
Thank you.
Hey, Tom.
Mayor?
So Andy, are you saying that right now, currently you're paying that 28,000 and also the water and light? Are you paying more than what you would be paying if you would have just bought electricity straight up from water and light?
It's a complicated calculation, maybe, probably, but we're also selling electricity to water and light.
Well,
And
Viking
then-
Electric is, right?
Well, yes, but we're buying all of it and then selling it to water and light. It comes up as a credit on our bill because we buy all of Viking Electric's electricity that they produce on our roof, and then we sell some of it on a good summer sunny day. We're selling power to water and light.
But you're hoping the cost savings you'll see in 2023, even if you're paying more than what
Well,
you would have.
Because the
Fine.
system should last 20 to 25 years. So if we're paying down the loan basically now, we're getting a good deal on buying the system.
And then what year was that put in?
2017.
So if it lasts 20 years, you'll get some years out of it then.
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe there won't be as many coal cars going by on the railroad tracks.
So I guess, Tom, I got another question. And then I got a message from Patrick who's
Yep.
got some
I was
questions.
going to ask if they had anything.
So how does our library compare to other libraries in the sense of fundraising? Because I think a lot of libraries probably do operate off of like friends, take the endowment out of it, like the Friends of Libraries type thing. How does our library compare in fundraising funds? Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's not comparable to avail a known amount. So if let's say your allocation dropped, are there Friends of Library people that would pick up the difference, or compared to other libraries, or do we not spend as much time on it? Or I guess I don't know about how much you fundraise outside of your endowment.
Several answers. In terms of municipal support per capita, we're 70th in the state. So, I mean, that's out of 280 libraries, that's good, but it's not, it's not great. It's good, and we're very pleased with it, and that's why we're showing up asking for a zero increase. In terms of fundraising, well, we just fundraised nearly $2 million. Friends of the Library are great, and we want to restart a Friends of the Library here. We had one, and then it kind of died away, and we're very interested in restarting one. They don't, that amount of money tends to be much smaller, and nobody wants to donate money to pay the electric bill or salaries. They want to donate money so you buy more books, or you bring in a speaker, or you do something special. If you're fundraising to keep the lights on, that's a hard fundraise. And it's hard for libraries who are pretty good at fundraising sometimes. But yes, we're interested in restarting our Friends of the Library. They kind of aged out, and then we had trouble recruiting new people into it. But we are interested in doing that, and we think that the redesign will help us. We are pretty good at fundraising because the solar project, the public-private partnership, Scott Prowl's undertaking the whole project at basically no benefit to himself. He's not making a dime on this. And our fundraising for the redesign of the library is, well, $2 million is a lot of community support when you're looking for $2 million. So we were quite pleased with the response we got from the community in terms of community support for this project at what was a pretty difficult time to fundraise, because we started fundraising like March 2020. And we started fundraising and then we closed the library.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Delaney, are you there on Zoom?
I am here. Can you hear me good?
Yep, go ahead.
I just have two questions. One, is Mcmillan Library part of a single county federated public library system, a multi-county federated public library system, or a single county consolidated public library system?
We're part of a large multi-county system that includes, let me get them, Wood, Portage, Adams, Greene, Sauk, Dane, and I'm missing one more, Columbia counties. So it's a 7-county system. Mcmillan constitutes 5% of the total system because Madison's in there, as are all the Dane County libraries. So we're part of a large, powerful system that does a lot of things for us. They oversee all our computers. They oversee our wireless. They oversee our internet. They handle a lot of things that if they weren't doing them, we'd need a whole nother staff person to try and handle them in terms of the tech. They also, just being part of a big system like that means if we didn't buy a book, somebody else did and we can get it. And if our copy's out, we can get it from another library. So we're part of the best system in the state, the most powerful, the most full-featured. They do the most things, and we're real happy to be part of that system because they do a lot for us.
And is that the Ingram charges or the, what is it?
It's South Central Library.
Library automation charges?
Yeah.
Okay,
Library
so-
automation goes to them. They also handle delivery between libraries.
Okay.
We get books delivered between libraries 5 days a week.
Okay, so that's part of that line item that they charge us for those services.
They do charge us
Okay.
for those services, but it's being part of a big shared system is cheaper than running a small system on your own.
Great. My other question was, how do you justify $2 million as a annual expense? Many times on here, you had said that cities our size are very similar. If I look at the cities our size, if we would go 4 up and 4 down from Mcmillan Library, we're looking at Adams County total expenditures of $441,000. Cudahy Library is $877,000. Rhinelander is $957,000. Kimberly is $913,000. Anago, $614,000. Germantown, $1,021,000. Middleton is $2,183,000. And then South Milwaukee, $755,000. Most of these are way less than half. And also those that are higher, we still have we're the highest. If you would go 10 up and 10 down just on support per capita, per resident of Wisconsin Rapids, we're way higher than anybody else. Could you speak to that?
Yeah. There's 2 population numbers we're dealing with. There's our city population, and we are a municipal library, but we serve a county population too. In terms of county population, Adams County is not a peer library for us in terms of total population served. Our total population served is 36,716. Our peer libraries there are not the libraries you mentioned. They are peer libraries in terms of the city of Wisconsin Rapids, but we serve more people outside the city than we do in the city. And that's why our budget is bigger. And in terms of compared to libraries in that range, the 32nd biggest library, we are pretty much in line with them in terms of the population served as opposed to the city population. And that's important because we get significant county funding, and that helps. Our budget wouldn't be our budget without that. Our budget, if we were just serving the city, would be considerably smaller, but we get county funding because we serve a lot of county residents. So if you do the per capita on the population we serve, according to the state budget, the state annual report, our budget is very much average for a library in that area. Our population is 32nd in the state. Our revenues are 25th, but part of that is it's not just the city revenue, it's the other revenue we have. So we're not wildly out of line. We may be a little higher than some libraries in the actual peer group of libraries that serve our size population. But if you compare us to libraries that are the same city size as Wisconsin Rapids, it looks very different.
And that's what I was talking about, is the city size. Wisconsin Rapids, we're at $67.47 per resident. And most of the other ones that I had mentioned are half or less than half that. And like I said, if you would go up by population, so what you're talking about is you serve more customers. I understand that. But the city of Wisconsin Rapids residents, they're the ones that are flipping this high bill to be able for you to serve that larger people. And with that, I thank you.
Andy, do you have any further comment?
Well, there are 382 libraries. Adams County is the 366th best funded in the state. Yeah, if you compare us to Adams County, we're going to look well funded. If you compare us with Wapaka, Wapaka is much better funded than we are. If you compare us with, instead of Adams County, the Town of Rome Library, the Town of Rome Library gets more per capita funding than we do. The people we serve outside the county do pay based on the amount of use they make of the library. This year, that's going to come to almost $600,000. That's a big part of why we're better funded than some other libraries, is that we get funding from the county for that service we provide outside. The town of Grand Rapids is a great big township with a whole bunch of people, and they use the library a lot. And some libraries are surrounded by very sparsely populated people areas. We've got Grand Rapids, and they generate a lot of use, and the county pays us nearly $600,000 for that, to reimburse us for that use.
Tim?
Yeah, you kind of just hit on it. I was just kind of was going to ask you to kind of explain how the county funding is calculated based on usage of the library outside of the city limits. Just kind of go into that a little bit.
If 30% of our use is outside the city limits, there's a formula set in the state statutes, and we get reimbursed using that formula, and it doesn't cover capital costs, but it covers a certain percentage of our operating costs. Without that, we'd be an awful lot less. In fact, our budget was less until the state stepped in and stopped the counties from underfunding us, which was basically an unfunded mandate on us. And Mcmillan Library Director Ron McCabe was the leader on getting that through the state legislature and signed. And that's why we get that amount of money from them. And that's why our budget is higher than, for instance, Marshfield's it's not that the city appropriation's that much different, it's that the county appropriation, the county reimbursement for service is higher here. And to a great extent, that's because of the town of Grand Rapids.
Thank you.
I get to go before them in a week or two and explain why I should get their money.
Mayor, go ahead.
Maybe this is a question for Sherry. Are there any other municipalities in the county that do that library exemption resolution? Are you aware of?
Yes,
There are?
yeah.
Okay.
Marshfield,
Yeah, I
Arvin.
didn't know
Chester.
if other ones did it also, because by doing that, obviously, we pay as residents more than what's required by state allocations.
And then you're exempted from the county tax.
Correct.
Which otherwise you would pay. So the libraries, the communities, the municipalities that
Right.
support a library, Arpin, Vesper, Pittsville, Nakusa, they all exempt themselves from the county tax
Because they have their own libraries.
because they have their own libraries, and then they get the library in their city instead of somewhere else.
And then I guess my only other question is that outside of the allocation that you get, we also own the library building. And so the city, the taxpayers are responsible above and beyond for any major repairs to the building, correct?
The library is city property, and its complete control of the library property is granted to the library board. So if that's confusing to you, you're right. So it's a city building, and the city should do major maintenance on it, major projects that need doing. On the other hand, we just did a $2 million project and did it mainly without city funding. So if we don't get major projects done, then we fall behind and they don't get done because we can't really do them out of operations. But we try to do as much of that as we can so it does not become a major project. We'd rather do a lot of small projects and do it out of operations than rely on capital funding from the city because there's competition. The city has a lot of things they need to do, and we recognize that. And if the more things we can do in terms of keeping the building in great shape so that we don't have major needs, the better for the city, the better for everyone.
Right, but those major needs are done outside that appropriation.
Yes,
Yeah,
when they're done.
when they need to be done. Yeah.
If and when.
Yeah. I think that I remember last one was a generator.
The city's been very supportive in recent times of major projects being done at the library.
But that's not something depreciated within your own allocation.
No.
Currently.
No.
Thank you.
Sherry?
So with the big remodel, is it safe to say that there are a lot of things that will be taken care of with this? Like you said, they found, asbestos or, this water leak or this or that or this or that.
There's a whole bunch of things that met the 1970 code that now meet the 2021 code. It is amazing to walk through and go, oh, this thing we put up with for 50 years, now it's in code. And now our lights turn on and off by themselves, and everything's LED, and there's a whole bunch of things in terms of controls and other things that were upgraded as part of this project that if we had not done the project, they'd still need to be done. But we did them as part of this project and spent a lot of private money on that. And so, yeah, the library, we redid the downstairs area in 2006. We redid the children's area in 2013, and now we've redone this area. The only areas left to do are like my office and some other staff areas. Most of the libraries had major upgrades, redesigns, and renovations in the past 15 years on a 50-year-old building, and the parts that haven't are the staff areas. So everything you see should look good.
And I have just one more question. When when you don't have a book in the facility, and I go online and I order the book and it comes 2 days later from somewhere else, what system is that? Is that the South Central Library system?
That's the
that
South
supports
Central
that?
Library System, and it's almost all of the libraries in the system, over 50 of them have their records online. And, the book may come from Marshfield, or it may come from Marshall, or it may come from Madison, but it doesn't matter. It's part of we all agree to share our resources, and we run the delivery service that drives the books around. And that's extremely efficient, extremely effective. And it's like the books that we don't have, the books that are too specialized or don't get enough use, we keep them in Madison. And when we need them, we call them and they send them up. It's an amazing, it's the way libraries should work in the 21st century. And we're real happy to be part of that.
So am I. Thank you.
Jake, go ahead.
Thank you. So do you receive funding outside of what you receive from the county from Grand Rapids, Port Edwards, or Barron?
No, the county handles, that's a countywide, there's a countywide reimbursement that the municipalities that support libraries are exempt from, and it's a tax amount, it's a rate that is applied just to those municipalities, the Grand Rapids, Saratoga, Remington. I mean, they get taxed at the same rate as town of Grand Rapids does. Too bad for them, they're far from a library, but they get taxed at the same rate.
So there is several municipalities that exempt themselves from paying in the county tax because they have a library.
Yes.
What is the total of that? What is the total funding they're receiving?
It's just, well, for 2022, I don't know, because I haven't gone before them. Last year, it was about $1 million. And Mcmillan got, I think, 580,000 of that because some of the other libraries are considerably smaller, and Marshfield's on the border of the county, so they don't get reimbursed for services to people from Marathon County. We get reimbursed by people in Wood County. So being as we're surrounded by a lot of people in Wood County, we get more of that money based on the use people make of us. If they don't make the use, the money goes elsewhere.
Right. Thank you. I point that out because neighboring counties, their libraries are completely funded from the county appropriation. So if that were to be the case per se, and we didn't have other municipalities with libraries, our library would be funded by that $1 million. But our budget this year is $2 million.
Well, that's 1 million for all the libraries in the county. They get divided
Right.
among the
If there's
7.
just one library, it would get that whole $1 million, right?
Yes, but it would also have to operate the Marshfield and Nakusa and Arpin and Vesper and Pittsville libraries.
I guess what I'm getting at here is, I mean, the city of Wisconsin Rapids, and this is a municipal library, but it does provide a lot of the funding. And I think it was said earlier that we have more people from outside the city using the library than people in the city.
It's about 50-50 in terms of people. It's not 50-50 in terms of circulation. It's about the same number of people use the library. People who live in the city make much heavier use of the library. So like 2/3 of the use is city people, even though half of the card holders, it's 50-50 for card holders.
So 2/3 of the time the library is used, if you were to count one usage, 2/3 of the time that would be a city resident.
Would be a city person.
Okay.
Yeah. And in terms of comparing one of the problems with county libraries, I mentioned earlier that there are 382 libraries in Adams County, 366. Portage County is 364 in terms of funding. So county libraries tend to be poorly funded.
Thank you for pointing that out.
I'll just give some information on the exemption. I just found a spreadsheet when we did the resolution. And the 2021 Wood County Library budget was $1,111,000 and some change. And the municipalities that exempted with libraries were Town of Arpin, City of Marshfield, City of Nakusa, City of Pittsville, Village of Vesper, and Wisconsin Rapids. So,
Yep.
Mayor?
But if we did not choose to exempt and pay in a portion, we would be paying
Right.
tax into
No.
that. And I don't know what that number would be. Do you know how much we would pay in tax to the county library system?
That'd be really hard to calculate. You'd also be,
But
they may also, at that point, they might decide that the headquarters library for the Wood County Library would be in Marshfield, and what we'd get here is a little branch.
yeah, I guess my point is that there would be additional monies in that pot to be divided out if we didn't do that exempt resolution and put in the 1.1 million, we would be paying a tax of an unknown amount.
Yeah.
I would think, given the size of Rapids, we would be putting in a decent chunk of money in paying in taxes that would be put into that pot to be used for funding libraries. So it'd be greater than that $1 million.
Somewhere around 80 or more % of that money would come as a county tax probably anyway. What you get for that additional money is you get a library in your community, and a county library would have they could choose just not to have a library here.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, like right now, city residents are going to pay, proposed in 2022, almost 1.3 million. If we chose to just become part of a county library system, what would that number be, is what I'm trying to get at.
Well, there'd have to be a county library.
I know, but I'm just trying to,
You'd have to convince Marshfield to give up their library, and Pittsville to give up their library, and Arpin to give up their library.
but
And the county then would have to be convinced that they should take this over. And they don't want a bunch of new employees. But it would probably be 85% of that amount at least,
85% of the, what
of
amount?
the appropriation.
Which is, you said, about $1 million?
Of the appropriation that the cities, that we're requesting from the city. But
Okay.
it's pretty hypothetical, because you'd have to convince all those libraries to form a county system, and you'd have to convince the county to take it on.
Yeah, I'm not trying to go that far. It was just
Yeah.
mentioned that one of the advantages of possibly paying a premium and just overall tax revenue towards a library would be that we get to choose to have it in our city. So I was trying to figure out what exactly, how much we're getting for that. But overall, I mean, I looked at and I encourage others to look at the data on the DPI website, Department of Public Instruction. They have a nice spreadsheet on there that has lots of data, lots of different numbers you could turn into statistics, I think, to sway an argument one way or another, as we may have seen. But overall, I don't necessarily have a problem with the budget that's proposed for 2022. As far as bills, material cost, or repairs, I do look at the positions and wages, though, and wonder if we're doing the right thing there. I know that if any of these other departments, and I asked the question to the PD in regards to directors, managers, et cetera, to total number of service employees that are interacting, what that ratio is, and this seems high. Could you, in a few positions specifically, could you speak to what the youth services manager does, the young adult services manager does, the adult services managers do, and what the differences are in those three positions.
Yeah, they are, we call them managers because they are at some point alone in the building with non-professional, with either paraprofessional or clerical staff. And so they are in charge of the building. And if you're there alone at night and you're in charge of the building, you're there Saturday, you're the person in charge of the building, you need to be a manager. And so they are managers. But they are, the young adult services librarian does services to teens. So she spends a lot of her day at the schools or working with teachers or planning programs for teenagers in our building. The youth services librarian is also out in the elementary schools doing story times, working with WIC, working with United Way. They're both out of the building quite a bit. The adult services librarian does a lot of programming. And so, again, he is not a hands-on manager for the rest of our staff. The public services manager, customer services manager is the one who is a hands-on manager of the people. He's the one who writes reviews. There aren't 7 people supervising 14 people. But if we don't identify them as managers, when they're alone in the building or when they're supervising, they're the only person in the building with the rest of the staff. They need to be the manager in charge. And so they're the manager in charge. But think of them as professional service providers who have training and experience in specific skills, and working with children is a skill, and working with teenagers, God help me, that's not a skill I have. And that's what they do. This is not a case where they just sit around and watch people. They're out of the building all the time doing things and working with other agencies, working with county health, working with city parks and rec, doing programs here and there. And that's what they're there for. If we called them Librarian 1 and Librarian 2, they would be doing the same thing, and then they wouldn't appear as managers. And we could do that, and then they wouldn't be managers, they'd be Librarian 1 and Librarian 2. But we prefer to put the manager label on them so that the other staff knows, yes, indeed, this is a person you have to listen to when they're in charge of the building.
Thank you. I guess I don't really see being in charge of the building or being there when no one else is a requisite for necessarily needing to be in a manager role per se, or a certain status of salary.
Now, if they were Librarian 1 and Librarian 2, they would be making those salaries. That's who we would comp them to when we do class and comp studies. We'd compare them to Librarian 1 and Librarian 2 at other libraries, and it's just nomenclature to call them manager or not manager. And we can change that name, but it doesn't change what they do. And being alone in a building, supervising a building that might have 100 or 200 members of the public in it, where sometimes a fight might break out, or we have to call the police, you have to make decisions, something goes wrong, you have to call service in. Yeah, it's a 40,000 square foot building, so it's not like they're there alone. They're there with members of the public, and they have to provide for the safety of the children and the teens. Yeah, we prefer to call them managers for that purpose, but not in the way that, the hierarchical way that there are managers all supervising each other. Most of them are not doing staff supervision most of the time, but when they're there, they're in charge. And I understand it's confusing.
No, even outside the title, it just seems like some of the positions, regardless of what they call, they're redundant in what they do. just the mentioning of, we have a youth services manager, young adult services manager that are both essentially doing the same thing.
Teenagers and children, teenagers in elementary school.
Well, you said they're
are
both
pretty
out of the
different.
building, and
Yeah, but one's going to the high school and the other's going to the elementary schools. Services to children who are learning to read are different than trying to get teenagers reading and continue to read. You'll find those positions at every library that's our size. There's a separate young adult librarian and a children's librarian.
yeah, I mean,
And again, I'll say, the library board, I'm encouraging them to do a class and comp study next year to compare our staff to other staffs, and see what we have. And we haven't done that lately. The city did that recently. The county's done that recently. We would have done it this year if we weren't busy tearing our whole building apart. But I've encouraged the board to take that as a task for next year. And I think the personnel committee of the library board should do that.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Yep.
So I look forward to seeing if you guys go forward with that. I mean, at this time, I'm not sure I'm totally comfortable with moving forward with the proposed budget as it sits for the reasons I noted. And that's just me personally, but that's where I'm at with things. I look forward to seeing the position and wage study for 2022.
Mayor?
I guess when you're talking, Andy, it made me question, doesn't every school have a librarian, and does your library people go work with librarians in the school, or is there a redundancy there?
No. Most of the elementary schools have a library position, but they don't have I don't want to denigrate them because they're hardworking, and my wife's an educator, and school librarians are valuable people, but there's a difference. And we serve the children after hours. We serve them all summer. We serve them on weekends, and we serve a different purpose. A school library is there to support instruction, and we're there to support all the other reading that children should be doing and everything else they learn that they don't learn in a classroom. So we are an auxiliary to the schools. We work with Mid-State. We work with UWSP. We work with Assumption. We understand we aren't doing their job. We're doing a different job, but it's something they're real happy to have us there to help them, because we reach the kids when they leave school, because they're not in school all day.
Tim?
Have you ever approached the school about kind of sharing in some of the costs of those services? Because, I just kind of like, as you were saying that, I thought back to our school liaison officers where we have an agreement with the school where they reimburse us. We have a presence in the school. We help them with, some of the issues and they pay us a cost sharing part of that position. I was ever wondering if you ever approached the district about maybe cost sharing some of those services, since it's a benefit to both, right?
That's not common, and the superintendent sits on our board, and I could sure raise that with him, because he's well aware of our services and the school services. In general, our staff ends up working nights and weekends, and their staff doesn't. I mean, they work. Don't tell a teacher they don't work on nights and weekends. But I mean, we're in our building on nights and weekends, and they're not. And we do have different goals, and we're doing different things. But we're partners with them. But we're partners with United Way, and we're partners with Boys and Girls Club. We're partners with a lot of agencies, and so sharing staff is something that is pretty rare. I can ask the school superintendent about that, though, because, like I say, he's on our board, and If he doesn't think it's a good idea, then it's not happening.
I guess the only thing that made me ask what I did is because when you made the statement about being in the schools, I made the assumption that you were in the schools during the day.
We are in the schools during the day, and we're in Boys and
Supplement.
Girls Club during the
Oh, okay.
day, and we work with the YMCA during the day, and we work with any number of groups as community partners. Because our goals and their goals line up. Where they line up, we work with community partners.
I guess my big concern is then those community partnerships are at the expense of the taxpayers.
Yes, and we'd only undertake them if we felt they were beneficial towards our mission, not their mission. I mean, we work with Boys and Girls Club not to make them a better Boys and Girls Club, but because we think it helps educate the children in the community.
Thank you. Anybody else with a question or anything? If not, Ann, I was going to ask. I was going to ask on Zoom. Is anybody there? Patrick?
Yeah. I have a question. We've been talking about employees. Before, he had mentioned that last year the library was closed, but the people still came into work. But yet when describing what they do for work, they work with people. And if people weren't allowed into the library building itself, I'm kind of at a loss there. Like, what did they do? And two, how many of these people were laid off because they didn't have work? It sounded from your answer before that everybody still worked or they came in and got paid. So if you could speak to that, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, there were projects that we had not had time to do that we did during our COVID times. For some of the times when we were closed, the city had paid leave for some of those times, and people took advantage of that when we were actually physically closed. After that, we did open up for curbside service, which took more staff than regular service per circulation. But we did a lot of work in terms of cleaning up the collection, and no one was doing busy work and no one was sitting around. We had staff and they were busy, they were doing things, and one of the main things was our conversion to RFID, which is will be a savings for the library in the long run, but required putting RFID tags in most of our materials. We got that. We thought that would take years to do. We got it done last year during the COVID closure. And we weren't closed very much this year. I mean, we had a brief closure last Christmas when cases were particularly high. But this year we were open most of the year.
Anything else, Patrick?
No, thank you.
Kyle, are you with us? Did you have something for this? All right. If there's nothing else by anybody, Andy, thank you for taking the time and appearing before us this evening.
I'm sorry, Tom, this is Kyle.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I wasn't able to, forgot I was muted there. I did want to make one comment if possible. And that is that, aside from, right, what a library traditionally is with regards to the books and online, I think a lot of the improvements that the library has made in the last year, I think also play into the educational and entrepreneurial shift that occurs within the community. I think they're now reaching another demographic, so to speak, especially with some of the new services, the studio, the woodworking, the printing capabilities that they have. And I think it's important to recognize that they do somewhat now serve as that entrepreneurial center within the community that from a business standpoint, we can encourage individuals who may have an idea to utilize their resources. And if that idea spawns and grows, it could eventually grow into a business that may have a brick and mortar store in our community. So from that aspect, I support those improvements that they've made, and I'm pretty excited to share with those that may be interested to use those services that I communicate with, again, especially those entrepreneurs within the community. So thank you for that comment.
Thank you very much. And I didn't want to go into that a lot tonight because this is a budget thing, but we designed this. The redesign was entirely designed. Big pieces of it were to help the business community, to provide space where they can come in, high-speed internet. We're going to get gigabit service throughout most of our space. We're building small rooms so that people can have meetings, individual meetings, work with customers, work with clients. We have databases to support that. We have online classes for all kinds of things that are business related. And the whole makerspace is designed to help people develop new skills. We have the Adobe Creative Cloud in there. We have CAD CAM software so that people can learn some of those skills, get started on them, and then transfer over to places like Midstate and UWSP to get the certificates and degrees they need. But we're the place that will get their feet wet on some of these things. And this is a real change. It's been years in the making. I've been planning this since 2018, and we started working on a makerspace in 2015. So this is a long time coming, and we're happy to see it coming to fruition. And we're very pleased that the community gave us so much support in bringing this project, getting this project funded and getting it completed now. So thank you, Alderman.
Thank you, Kyle. Patrick, Kyle, anything else? If not, then Andy, again, thank you for coming here this evening. And our public hearing on our big budget is next week, Thursday. And we'll hold you to, I guess, a tour of the building when it's done that you mentioned earlier in your presentation to when it's all said and done, so we can all see what actually all does go on there. And you can give us a grand tour and show it all off. So, okay. Thank you. Item number 3 on our agenda is 2022 City of Rapids budget review. And I think it's open if anybody had something to talk about.
Yeah, I just put that on there in case anyone would have any other questions or concerns about the budget that we could address somewhere for the public hearing.
Sherry, go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead. Go right ahead. Okay, we got time.
Okay, just a few quick things here. The meeting on, sorry, I wasn't feeling well, so I wasn't here, but I watched them all. On October 14th, where we were talking about the stormwater utility fee, probably going up $2 more a month. I know we're short, I think 84,000, Tim, you indicated on the meeting. And that had to deal with street sweeping and the landfill charge that we have to pay for now. And this storm, we took $250,000 out of that to put into the sewer construction fund. Is that correct?
Right. In last year's budget, in the budget, we have built in that $250,000 that's generated from that fee goes to offset the sewer construction. Really, what that does is offset what we have to borrow for those construction projects. The reason why the fee's going up is because obviously we had a increase in the street sweeping, because of the landfill charges of approximately $60,000 that now we have to pay, because before it was kind of it was a barter system, so to speak, where we gave them road base in exchange for that, and now that's being separated. So that additional 60,000 had to be budgeted in the street sweeping, and then obviously in the street department revenue account in the general fund, I kind of added some additional revenues in anticipation of some road-based sales to the landfill. Also, our storm sewer maintenance increased approximately $66,000 from the previous years, which accounted for that kind of that operating deficit that were the reason for the justification for raising the fee to kind of keep us in line with covering our expenses plus a portion of that construction. When we, kind of the premise behind the fee or the long-term range for the fee is that we've been increasing it incrementally, hopefully to offset what we borrow for storm sewer construction. Unfortunately, this year, are operating kind of unexpectedly because mostly of that landfill kind of went up and kind of offset that. So, but it's anticipation that down the road that will slowly increase that fee to hopefully cover all our amount that we have to borrow for storm sewer construction.
So in essence, I'm just trying to relate it to the possible transportation utility, because I know people, I live in the city, I'm sick of paying fees, I'm sick of paying more. I mean, but it just happens, I get it. But it just worries me because it's like now, oh, here's another fee, and oh yeah, it's only going to be this, but next year it's this, and this year, and this year, and this year, and it keeps growing and growing and growing, and it's hard to pay all that, But so in an essence, if we're going to pay more into the utility fee for that on water and light bills, right? That's where it comes out of.
Correct.
Right? So eventually our tax levy could decrease because we're paying more into this utility fee, and our property taxes could go down because of this, right?
Correct. I mean, it's kind of like, we discussed this, the transportation utility, with, the amount that we offset our debt with this fee obviously reduces the amount that we have to borrow, which reduces the amount that we have to levy over the life of that note. Usually it's 10 years of the principal and interest. So one, that the 250 that this fee generates currently to offset that debt is not only paying for 250 construction, but it's avoiding those interest costs on that 250 over that 10-year period.
I'm just worried, just not borrowing Peter to pay Paul and, okay, we got this utility to do this. Okay, now we got extra money. Now we can do this. And it's like, as we keep paying more and more, I watch that because it's very easy to do. One other thing I had, I know we want to get out of here. Hang on. Question development. You guys were talking on the same night, I believe it was page 39 and 49 of the budget, about additional training, professional development of $30,000 in the HR training. And I believe that's when the mayor was talking about that the staff management wasn't being trained as far as HIPAA, conflict resolution. So there was $35,000 in to bring a consultant in for 35 people. So it's about, $1,000 a person. I'm just, not that it's a tremendous amount of money, but I guess I'm just kind of confused. I know our HR director has to be trained in all of those items. Why wouldn't our HR director, and how they bill it out per department would be fine, but why couldn't he train the department heads on that instead of the $35,000? To me, that just seemed very high. Just a thought. I don't know.
Right, and I can't really address, you'd have to ask Ryan Hartman, and maybe it's a Thursday night at the public hearing might be a, good discussion to have on that. But I know that, through some of the things that issued, they thought that, it would be good to bring in and do some professional training from a management, because a lot of times, people get promoted through the ranks, but they may not receive that, professional management training as far as, employees' rights, conflict resolution, how to document discipline and things like that. And I think that was the premise behind that training, is bringing someone in to kind of put them through a course, so to speak, to, train them in those areas so they're more effective in dealing with some of those issues that arise throughout the year. But, I mean, I think it's something that, I mean, I can have Ryan reach out and put something out to the council about exactly what's behind that, if you would like, or we can address it, at the public hearing next Thursday.
And I could bring it up then too, because, and I know in each department's budget, they also have professional development. Now, I know a lot of that
Yeah.
is perhaps just a training that they're going to or something like that, but I just thought that fee was, that just stuck out at me. And then another thing, the FIT project, which was on page 49 for 62,000. We have an on-site physical therapist, and I know they kind of talk that, and these are my notes, but something about the modification factor, so our work comp amount decreases because we have a physical therapist on site. And I want to know how much is this utilized compared to the $62,000 that we spend for that?
Yeah, and after that conversation that we had after that meeting, I know that the Human Resources has actually gotten some statistical reports from the provider on how much it's utilized and things, and I think that they'd be able to present that and stuff like that. But I know that, and it's, it is, the premise behind the workers' comp is that, if someone has kind of an, on-site or work injury that maybe doesn't require immediate medical attention, instead of going to the doctor, they go to the physical therapist, and if it can be resolved there without incurring the medical costs, which then counts against your mod factor, that's where you get that savings and reduction in the our workers' comp mod factor. But I will make sure that they have that information and can address it maybe Thursday.
Sorry. I don't know, I wanted to be here for Water and Light, but I wasn't able to. I mean, I know this isn't per se your budget, but it is. But, sorry, throwing you under the bus. No. If you can help me understand, and I'm sorry I'm not prepared because I forgot to tabby these, but just a second, I'm sorry. So part of the budget is electric, and part of the budget is water. And sorry. Okay, so like on page 16 which was the electric. One example, like, okay, I'm sorry. Maintenance of general plant. So $200,000 and $2,800 for the maintenance of the general plant. It seemed like there was a lot of duplication between the electric part and then the water part. And I was just confused at why it's the same building. I'm sorry, I don't have it.
It's probably because it's since it's common to both operations, they probably do an allocation of that expense to the electric budget and the water budget. So combined, it costs, let's say, $400,000 for whatever particular line item, but based on some allocation formula, they're saying electric is this percentage and water is that percentage. We kind of do that with the fire department budget, if you notice, is that we have, because they have two distinct kind of services. They have the fire and then the EMS, and some of the common type expenses like building maintenance, we allocate based on an allocation formula. I'm guessing that's what it is. It's not a duplication. It's just an allocation of an expense to both those budgets.
So you're saying it's like $360-some thousand for the maintenance of the building every year?
And it could be, and I don't know their accounting system, what's included, but that might be, not only building maintenance, but that might be the utilities and things like that. So I'm not sure. But I can definitely reach out to Jeff Kuhn at the Water and Light if you have any specific type line items.
And then, in the page 15, under customer account expense, it says customer records and collection, $676,000. What is that?
That's the cost that they do to bill and collect all their utility bills. So that's, the billing, the personnel involved with the billing. It's also the billing software and, and things like
year?
that.
Wow.
Like I said, I'm just kind of generalizing here because I'm not specific as to exactly all their line items and what's in that.
Because then it's, hang on, customer, because it says, okay, yeah, and I know what you're saying is, I'm sure it's divvied out, but, so like $116,700 is in the water side for just customer records and collection, and then 200, or, sorry, where is it? I lost it. Oh, here. $676,000 in the electric. So, but I wouldn't think that would be wages, would it?
I'm just getting to a
I'm sorry.
calculation that they get.
That just struck me as, I didn't know. That just seems like a lot of money.
And I'm not sure, because I know in the calculation they give us, and I don't know where it's accounted for, but, in the whole collection, expense, and I'm not sure if it's in that line item or not, or it's divvied up, but, we share in that cost of collection and customer services, and it includes not only like the people involved with the billing and collections, but there's a supervision type allocation there. There's also maintenance of meters, depreciation of meters that's included in that calculation. Now, I don't know how they account for it in this specific line item, but those are the types of things. And they also have return on meters. That's all in there that, the sewer or wastewater utility pays for that service. So that's what I know is in that calculation, whether it's in that line item or not, I can find out.
Because then and then just under the customer accounts expense, so supervision is 42,400 on that one, and 6,100, I guess, on the water part. I just thought those high. That's
Okay.
and I apologize. Like I said, I wanted to be here, but I
No,
couldn't- I
and
couldn't ask
I'll
them
reach out to Jeff
further, but-
Kuhn, and I'll have him kind of address those two line items. And then he can probably further explain exactly what's incorporated in those line items.
And then, do you know who does? I mean, so like the mowing and those kind of things that happen there. Does the city crew do that, or they do their own, and that would be included in these outside services employed?
Yeah, we don't mow their grounds. I'm guessing they probably contract that out.
Because I see that for the electric, it's 53,000, and then when you go to the water, outside, I'm sorry, I'm so unprepared. Outside services employed is 35,000, or I'm sorry, 10,000. And then the only other question I had, and Tim, I don't know if you know this. I hate to put you on the spot because I know you don't know everything, but on page 10, the computer workstation replacements, 12,000. I mean, I know that's really not a lot because I know it's not, but every 5 to 7 years they're replaced. I mean, I don't know many businesses that replace their workstations every 5 to 7 years. I just thought that stuck out at me too.
Yeah. My guess is they're probably talking about, are you talking about the physical furniture? I'm guessing it's probably the computer
It
and
just
the
says
software.
computer workstation replacements. Their workstations are replaced every 5 to 7 years of use. And it's like, wow.
I would assume that that's the actual computer and not like the actual furniture.
Right, and then and update. So that's why I just didn't know if.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's, but I'll verify that for you.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you all. A lot of interesting questions tonight with the library and other things here, so. And if there's nothing else, I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I'll second that. All in favor of adjourning, respond by aye. Aye. Opposed, ayes have it.